Good morning. Welcome to the top of the tallest peak in Chino Hills State Park. My name is Barbara. I'm a park volunteer here, and I'm currently standing atop San Juan Hill, elevation 1,781 feet. We were supposed to be bringing this program to you live, but once again, we had some technical issues. So we're videotaping it for you, and it'll be available later for you to watch. So back in December of 2019, I shared a little history with you about the second tallest peak in the park, which is Gilman Peak. That peak is across the way behind me and kind of to that direction. Um, and so since that time, we've had a lot of park visitors who have expressed an interest in knowing more about San Juan Hills history. So today we're going to try to share a little of that with you. So helping me today, we have two people. The first is another volunteer, Becky. Let's see if Becky come show you her face here. Becky is a park volunteer and also my hiking and geocaching companion. Um, and then we have Ian. A lot of you may know Ian. He is the state park interpreter. He runs all our education programs. And he also is our boss because even though we're a good 40 years older than he is the volunteer coordinator here at Chino Hills State Park. So if you're interested in volunteering or becoming a volunteer, he's the one you want to talk with. So we're standing on land that was once owned by Rancho Santa Ana, but today this same land is actually within the city of Yorba Linda. As a lot of you know, our park is more than 14,000 acres. So it falls within the boundaries of several different cities as well as different counties. There's different ways to reach San Juan Hill, depending on whether you want to approach from the east, from the west, from the east, or even from the south. So if you choose to approach from the west and you look off to the north, you will see behind me, you can see much of the rest of Chino Hills State Park, including our Northridge boundary. Northridge is, for the most part, the northern boundary of our park. If you start from the west and you look off to the south, you will see suburbia. You will see massive amounts of homes and businesses down there. And you will quickly understand what it means when we say we are on the urban edge. Basically, these suburban areas come right up to our park in many places, and so our park residents and our urban residents need to learn how to coexist. Um, Today, though, we chose to hike from the east. So, to hike from the east, you enter Chino Hills State Park off of Sapphire Street in Chino Hills, and you get to drive 3 miles on a paved road that goes right through the middle of the park. And along the way, you get to enjoy the beauty of the park itself and see just how large this park is. You'll drive this paved road all the way back to the Rolling M Ranch, where we have a historic barn. And from there, you'll pick up the Southridge Trail. The Southridge Trail is a wide, kind of a fire road type of trail. It's used by hikers, by bikers, by equestrians, by joggers. It can accommodate all users because, like I said, it's a fairly wide trail. Just be aware, dogs are not allowed on any of our trails, nor are e-bikes. So you start coming up Southridge Trail, and you're gonna hike about 5.4 miles round trip in distance. and you're going to have about 1,200 feet of elevation gain. This trail is pretty dry, especially this time of year. It's July right now. So you're going to see a lot of dried vegetation, dried invasive weeds, but you will also pass certain areas where you see some pretty things. One of the things you're going to see are some groves of our California black walnut trees. I'm going to have Becky show you a couple pictures. These are our California black walnut trees. And if you look closely right now, you will see that these trees have walnuts on them. They will look like little green balls right now, and later on they'll turn brown. But they're beautiful trees. And then if you look down into the canyon areas, down into Telegraph Canyon, you will see rows and rows of coast live oak trees. And these are also gorgeous trees. Here's pictures of the coast live oak trees. And both the coast live oak trees and the California black walnut trees are native. Also on the way up here, we were lucky enough to spot milkweed plants. We spotted both the narrow leaf and the wide leaf milkweed plants, which are certainly good to see, given the fact that this is what our monarch butterflies rely on, and there's been a decline in the population of monarch butterflies. We saw a lot of native cliff asters, and we even saw a few late blooming lupin plants, which was pretty cool. Excuse me. So just before you reach San Juan Hill, if you look off to your left, you will see a beautiful area known as Water Canyon. Water Canyon is actually a natural preserve and protected area within the park itself. And it's a very important biological corridor. So if you look down, as you're coming up here, you look to your left and you will be able to see Water Canyon down below. Don't look for water. You're not likely to find any water down there right now. So sooner or later, you'll come to a little single track off of the main Southridge Trail, and that will lead you the last couple hundred feet up here to the summit of San Juan Hill. There's the single track. All right, so the first thing you'll probably notice when you arrive up here on the summit is what's behind me here. Now, I have to tell you, if you haven't been up here for a while, you probably have not seen this because this is a fairly recent structure. I just saw it for the first time about a month ago, and I thought it was a cell phone tower of some sort. But no, not a cell phone tower. This is actually the modern version of a fire lookout tower. And it was designed, it's a project that was done in collaboration with UC San Diego and a couple other universities. I think one in Nevada. I can't remember where the other one was, Oregon, I believe. And the project is called Alert Wildfire. It's an effort to provide several hundred of these basically fire webcams in high fire areas. I'm sure you know that we've had several wildfires that have come through our park. Back in 2008, 90% of our park was burned by the Freeway Complex fire. And then just last year in October of 2020, the Blue Ridge fire came through and burned 60% of the park. So these are potentially very, very important fire webcams. This particular one is sponsored by CAL FIRE. So thank you, CAL FIRE, for sponsoring that for us. And we certainly hope that this will allow these fires, potential future fires, and we're pretty sure there are going to be future fires, but it will allow potential future fires to be spotted much more quickly. So we hiked all the way from the Rolling M Ranch. You can ask Ian and Becky. It's not an easy hike. They're going to attest to that. There's a lot of uphill climbing. We just kind of took our time, but you get up and you're wondering, well, okay, so I came all the way up here. What is so special up here that it warrants its own presentation? Except that, number one, we know it's the tallest peak in Chino Hills State Park. And number two, we know that it has this great new fire webcam. But wait, there's more. So walk over here with me, and I'll show you a little something that's on the ground. I'm going to put my glasses on for this so that I can actually read it. Ian, are you able to get a picture here of the marker?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so you will see that it says Orange County Surveyor, and then it has a line going down the middle. On one side of the line, it says SBCO, and on the other side, it says OCO. So these stand for San Bernardino County and Orange County. So it turns out that San Juan Hill is smack dab on the borderline of San Bernardino and Orange County. So if I stand here, I'm in San Bernardino County. If I stand here, I'm in Orange County. And ta-da, I'm in both counties at the same time. So how cool is that? So that's so that's the third thing about San Juan Hill. But there's definitely a fourth thing. There's a structure up here. Anybody who's been up to San Juan Hill has seen this structure before. But many visitors to the peak come away thinking that this structure had something to do with Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders and the Battle of San Juan Hill. But the problem with that thinking, it was a decisive battle in the Spanish-American War, but it actually took place in Cuba, and it took place on July 1st, 1898, and this structure was placed here 2 years earlier in 1896. So it had absolutely nothing to do with Teddy Roosevelt. So before I show you the structure, I'm going to give you a little hint as to what it is. I need to talk briefly about something called geodetic surveying, which is basically surveying that determines exact locations of points on the Earth's surface, given or taking into consideration the curvature of the Earth. Now, I am not a surveyor, so if any of you are surveyors and I misspeak about something, feel free to correct me in a post. But most survey marks back in the 1800s were set by an agency called the USCG, United States Geodetic Survey. It's changed names several times, and now it's called the National Geodetic Survey, or NGS. But back in those days, the USCG survey did most of the surveying, and they used a method known as triangulation. And triangulation would establish different angles and distances between different points. We'll show you a picture of that in a bit. But all of this became the basis for map making. I'm going to show you, or Becky's going to show you a picture of a typical surveying crew. Now, this is not a surveying crew that actually came up here, but this would have been about the right time frame, 1800s. And by the way, many of our early leaders and well-known Americans were surveyors. People like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, John Wesley Powell, Lewis and Clark, Daniel Boone, all surveyors, okay? And here's George Washington in his surveying outfit. I think we have two pictures of George Washington, surveyor. We'll give Becky a moment to organize. There we go. And also, Becky, I think you have a picture showing what triangulation basically looks like.
Why, yes, I do.
And you can see how it measured distances and angles between different points. The first time somebody tried to explain triangulation to me, I was clueless. I said, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. But anyway, in order for these surveys to be done, there needed to be something called triangulation stations with fixed coordinates. And it just so happens that San Juan Hill became one of those triangulation stations in the year 1886. Now, note that I am not saying 1896, I'm saying 1886. Remember that, okay? So a survey crew would have come up here. They would have placed they would have drilled a hole in the ground, and they would have placed a copper bolt marker in the drilled hole, and then they would have probably taken a large rock or small boulder of some sort and placed it on top of that copper bolt as a surface marker. Okay? So that was done in 1886 up here. And then most of the United States-Mexico border had already been established back in 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. But between the years 1893 and 1897, they did some very important surveys that were called remonumenting surveys. Now, the best understanding I have of that would be sort of like a redo, remeasuring, retaking these measurements to confirm the establishment of the boundaries. And so it turns out that San Juan Hill was one of 4 historic triangulation stations that played a major role in the remonumenting surveys that helped establish that most of California was part of the United States and not part of Mexico. So I'm thinking people who live in San Diego would certainly be interested in the fact that our San Juan Hill maybe kept them in the United States. So now that you know a little bit about the surveying history of San Juan Hill, I can show you what the 4th thing that's up here that is interesting. We're going to walk over here kind of behind Ian, and he'll try to follow us over. There's a concrete monument up here. And it turns out that this concrete monument is what remains of that very important triangulation station. So remember that I told you that the original bolt was placed in 1886. But then 10 years later, in 1896, someone came and built this monument. And so the monument If you look from the top, Ian, you can see it's basically shaped like a hexagon. It's about 26 inches across. It's about 3 feet tall. And you can still see the copper bolt replacement, which is the station mark. That's it right there. So if we look back at the NGS, the National Geodetic Survey records, we can find a lot of information. And it said that there was once a bronze rivet in the center, a bronze rivet and it had a triangle with a cross in the center. It was probably 2 to 3 inches in diameter, which is kind of the standard shape of a benchmark. But then in 1951, surveyors came up here. And they found only the chiseled remains of a standard benchmark disc. And they noted that all that was left was a 1 by 1 inch triangle with a cross in the center. So I'm going to have Becky show you a picture. This is not the actual benchmark, but this is what I think that benchmark probably looked like. You see the triangle and you see the cross there in the center, the cross mark. So when the 1951 surveyors came up here, they probably found what is in the circled area there, the chiseled remains that were just the 1 by 1 inch triangle with a cross mark in the center. So today, the bolt is what's left, and that's the station mark. So let's look at the monument itself. As you can see, it definitely shows some wear and tear. The base is all crumbly. There's a lot of chunks of cement that are missing out of it, on various parts of it, actually. Let's look at the inscription here on the north face. It says, San Juan, 1896. So this is the reason people come up here and think it had something to do with Teddy Roosevelt and the Battle of San Juan Hill. Okay? But we know it doesn't. And here's the triangle, shows it's a triangulation station. And then on the south face, it's kind of hard to read, but it says CG, U.S. Coast and Geodetic. And then this probably said survey, because you can see VEY, but the SUR has been plastered over. Okay, so in addition to that, you will see 2 posts. And then you will see where one post, there was a third post, and it obviously has broken off somewhere along the way. These posts, I was going to have you try to guess if you were doing this live, but since we're not doing this live, I'll have to tell you. The posts were for the legs of a tripod to sit on. So when they came up here to do a survey, the tripod legs would sit on these posts. The tripod would hover over the bolt, and there would be a plumb bob that was dropped down right over the copper bolt. And then on the top of the tripod, there would be a little instrument called a theodolite. The theodolite was used for measuring horizontal and vertical angles. So Becky has a picture. This is an undated picture, probably from the 1900s, but it shows a tripod with a plumb bob attached, and also you can see the theodolite on the top there. So it turns out that sometimes these triangulation station the markers would get lost, misplaced somehow. Could have been from weather, erosion, landslides. These were ranching days, so maybe some of these marks were disturbed by ranchers' equipment or something of that sort. So, what they did when they placed these triangulation stations is they also placed what they called reference markers. And the reference markers were designed to help re-find the station if it got misplaced or lost. So, we know that when this was first established, the monument in 1896, there were two reference stones placed. Those stones were then reset in 1899, and then they weren't found again in 1929. And so two new marks were placed. They became reference marks 3 and 4. And then in 1953, though that was when they were placed, 1953, reference marks 3 and 4. Then in 1962, those marks were found to be destroyed. So in 1962, reference marks 5 and 6 were placed, and those reference marks are still here. So we're going to walk over here first of all and see reference mark number 5. Okay, so this is reference mark number 5, and there's one very interesting feature of these reference marks. Do you see the arrow? The arrow points to the triangulation station. So that's how these reference marks would help them re-find or relocate the station if it became misplaced. So let's look at the wording. It says reference mark U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey for information right to the director, Washington, D.C., $250 fine or imprisonment for disturbing this mark. San Juan, number 5, 1886. Now, obviously, these marks were intended to be permanent, and disturbing them was and is against the law. A $250 fine back in the 1800s would obviously have been a pretty hefty amount of money. So let's walk over and I'll show you reference mark number 6. We're happy that there's no rattlesnakes out today, at least not right here. So here's reference mark number 6. And again, note the arrow, and Ian will show you the monument. You can see how the arrow is pointing directly to the triangulation station. So basically, what's up here is the main triangulation station and the two reference marks, number 5 and number 6, and our Orange County surveyor marker, which shows the dividing line between San Bernardino and Orange County. So, geodetic surveys nowadays are done by things like orbiting satellites and drones. Recently, I was at the Brea Sports Park, and I just happened to run into these two young men, and they happened to be surveyors. They were getting ready to do a survey, and they had their drone set up out on the soccer field. So I spoke with them for a few minutes. They said they had actually done some work up here on San Juan Hill in the past. These surveys are done all the time for various reasons. I guess having to do with everything from gas and electricity and water to property lines and easement lines and what all, I'm not a surveyor, so I couldn't tell you everything. But anyway, there's also two hobbies that are very popular that are kind of related to this, and that's geocaching and benchmarking. Benchmarkers like to look for these markers on things like this triangulation station. They like to look for benchmarks. And geocachers look for treasures that have been hidden by using satellite coordinates. So back in 2006, the current president of our Chino Hills State Park Interpretive Association, otherwise known as CHISPIA, um, came up here. He used to like to benchmark. He put the coordinates of the triangulation station in his GPS. This was in 2006. And he came up and he wanted to compare his reading with what it actually was supposed to be. So this is the picture he took in 2006. And that's his GPS. And you can see he placed it right next to the bolt on the triangulation station, right on top of the monument, and it brought him to within 13 feet. So, just for fun today, Ian has this run-of-the-mill, not really expensive GPS unit, but we're going to see. I put the coordinates in, and we're going to see what kind of a reading we get when we go over there. So, San Juan Hill. We'll place our GPS right here next to the bolt. And if you can see, Ian, maybe you can tell us what that says since you can see it a little better. How many feet? You can't see it? It looks like it says 9 or 10 feet. It keeps fluctuating. 9 or 10 feet. So it pretty close. Closer than Larry's 13. Right, Larry? Um, so Larry told me, by the way, that he also spoke with a surveyor when he was in the park one day who had some really, really high-tech surveying equipment. And he was able to get a reading to within an inch. So while we're talking about uh, benchmarking and geocaching, there is actually a geocache up here. The park knows that this geocache is here. It is technically a little bit off trail. We like our geocaches to be just a few feet off trail. It's a little bit more than that, but they have allowed this geocache to stay here because it's been there 20 years. It's been there since 2001, about 9 months after geocaching first became a thing. So it's one of the oldest ones. I found the geocache myself back in 2007. I hiked up here, found the geocache, went home and logged it. So I looked back to see what I had written in my log, and this is what I wrote. We enjoyed a light lunch at the top using the USGS survey marker for a table and the cement posts for chairs. We just needed a little tablecloth. So recently, Becky and I, fellow volunteer Becky and I, we hiked up here a month ago and we recreated that moment by enjoying our snack atop the peak. You can see we used the monument as a table and the tripod posts as stools. So that was pretty fun. So there's definitely a lot of history up here. There are things to do up here, things to see up here. It's a great place after your hike to sit and have a snack, reflect on history, just do some thinking, enjoy the magnificent views. On a windy day, especially, you can see everything from the ocean to islands to freeways, mountains, communities, you see cities, landmarks, you name it, everything from here on a nice clear day. And so, Ian, maybe you can do like a 360 degree, what do you call it, like a panorama view for us, just to show us some of what we can see from up here. You would be able to see Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, LA County. So, this station is one of the few geodetic stations that were established in the 1800s in Southern California that still remain mostly in their original condition. We hope that this triangulation station will survive for a long number of years in the future. It's already lasted 125 years and probably survived several wildfires in the process. So, if you want to know more about the history of the triangulation station, there's actually a database that's maintained by what's now called the NGS, the National Geodetic Survey. And each one of these stations is given a permanent identifier letter number combo. So I'm going to have Becky hold up what the letter number combo is for this San Juan Hill station, DX4280. And if you want more information, you can go to the NGS website and look up that number and read some interesting information. So, in the meantime, Chino Hills State Park extends an invitation to you and you and you and all of you to hike, bike, ride a horse up here and experience San Juan Hill for yourself in person. So, thank you all for joining our presentation, and thank you to Becky and Ian for helping me out. And Ian will be posting this video on Facebook, on the Chino Hills State Park website, YouTube. I don't know where all he's posting it, all over the world. You'll see it everywhere. And so we hope you watch it and post any questions. We'll try to answer everything we can for you. So long from the top of San Juan Hill, the tallest peak in Chino Hills State Park. Come wave, come give a wave. Bye.
Bye.